are spells that need no wands. There are curses that wear perfume and promises. There are enchantments that whisper in polite voices, sitting at dinner tables, smiling through their teeth. The most dangerous witchcraft in the modern world is not the muttering of incantations over a bubbling cauldron, but the quiet reshaping of the human heart by invisible desires, the spell of the ordinary, the charm of success, the bewitchment of comfort. You may laugh at the thought of witches, you may dismiss superstition, but somewhere in the shadows of your own living room, there may already be a spell at work, not cast by a stranger, but by something much closer, by the unseen hunger that has taken up residence in the heart of your family. It begins with something small, a new ambition perhaps, a subtle shift in priorities, a glance that lingers too long on what the neighbor owns, a casual remark that your home is not as grand, your car not as new, your clothes not as fine. You tell yourself it's harmless. Everyone wants more, don't they? Everyone wants to feel that they are moving forward. But it is at that moment, that quiet, barely noticeable moment, that the first word of the spell is spoken. The witch does not need your consent, she only needs your attention. And what she conjures is not darkness, but glitter, not horror, but imitation light, a radiance that blinds rather than illuminates. The first secret sign of the spell is not chaos, it is restlessness, the feeling that what you have is not enough, that what you are is somehow incomplete. You begin to see your blessings not as gifts, but as insufficiencies. You scroll through the endless galleries of other people's lives, and you begin to measure your soul in pixels. The witch smiles, for she knows that dissatisfaction is her most elegant instrument. She doesn't need to steal your joy. She only needs to convince you that it isn't real. And once she has done that, she can lead you anywhere. The second sign appears soon after: silence. The house grows quieter, not because peace reigns, but because hearts have retreated behind screens and schedules. Family becomes a collection of individuals orbiting around separate devices, each one lost in the glow of their own private illusions. Conversations shrink to logistics. Affection turns into habit. The home, once alive with laughter and prayer, becomes a museum of routines. The witch doesn't destroy, with fire she freezes. She turns warmth into indifference. And one day, you wake up in the same room with people who feel like strangers, all of you bewitched by the same subtle curse, the worship of convenience over connection. Then comes the third sign, a shift in values so slow, so reasonable, that no one notices it. You start to excuse small compromises. You justify a lie because it keeps peace. You shade the truth to protect reputation. You overlook greed because it looks like ambition, and you call it progress. The witch's spell is cleverer than sin. It disguises corruption as virtue. She does not tempt you with evil. She tempts you with success. She whispers, "You deserve more. You've worked hard. You've earned this." And you believe her because the voice sounds like your own. You see, the witch's power does not come from the outside. It grows from within, from the soil of your own desires. Every age has its witchcraft, and ours is the enchantment of wealth without wisdom. Money, in itself, is not evil. It is merely the instrument of will. But when the will is sick, even gold becomes poison. You can build a palace of comfort and still find yourself shivering inside it, haunted not by ghosts, but by the echo of your own emptiness. And that is the spell's cruelest joke. It promises fulfillment while feeding hunger. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. If you want to know whether your family is under the spell, look not at your possessions, but at your peace. Are you grateful when you rise, or anxious before the day even begins? Do you speak to one another with patience, or with the weary irritation of souls too tired to love? Do you pray, or have you replaced prayer with planning? The witch does not care if you stop believing in God. She only needs you to start believing in yourself too much. For pride, after all, is the oldest magic. It was pride that made angels fall, and it is pride that now makes families crumble beneath the glittering weight of their own egos. We live in an age that scoffs at the idea of the soul. We dissect it, redefine it, decorate it with psychology and slogans, but rarely do we guard it. And yet, the soul remains the battlefield where every spell is fought. The witch's greatest victory is not to make you evil, it is to make you ordinary, numb, self-satisfied. She does not want your destruction. She wants your distraction. If you are too busy chasing the next thing, she need not destroy you at all. You will destroy yourself, slowly, quietly, efficiently. There was a time when families gathered not around a screen, but around a story, when fathers prayed instead of scrolling, when mothers blessed instead of comparing, when children dreamed of becoming good, not famous. That time is gone, perhaps forever, but the spirit that made it possible still breathes beneath the noise if only we would listen. The antidote to the witch's spell is not outrage, nor superstition, but awakening. To see the invisible chains and name them for what they are. To choose again the difficult simplicity of love over the easy seduction of comfort. To remember that peace is not found in abundance, but in alignment. And yet, to awaken is painful, for when the spell begins to break, you see not only the beauty you have lost, but the part of yourself that willingly traded it. You see your complicity in the curse. You see how greed was dressed as vision, how vanity wore the robes of confidence, how selfishness disguised itself as self-care. The witch never forced you. She merely agreed with you. She echoed your desires, magnified your excuses, and turned them into your chains. And when you finally awaken, you realize she was never real. She was only your reflection, smiling back at you from the mirror. That is how it always begins, not with a scream, but with a whisper, not with an enemy at the door, but with a shift in the heart. And if you are not careful, by the time you notice, the house will already be under her charm, a home full of things, but empty of meaning, a family full of faces, but void of souls. And somewhere in that quiet, comfortable despair, the witch laughs not because she has won, but because you never knew there was a war. The witch's spell does not break easily, for it does not bind the body, it binds the imagination. She teaches you to picture life not as it is, but as it should appear to others. She replaces the living fire of purpose with the flickering illusion of presentation. You learn to smile for photographs even when the heart is heavy, to speak of blessings even when gratitude has withered, to build a reputation so impressive that no one dares to look beneath it. And so, your home becomes a stage. Every room, a performance. Every conversation, a negotiation between image and truth. Slowly you forget what honesty sounds like, and you begin to fear silence because silence tells the truth. The fourth sign of the spell is fatigue not of the body but of the soul. You wake in the morning already tired, for your spirit has been wrestling through the night with the weight of pretending. The witch knows that exhaustion is a subtle obedience. Tired hearts rarely resist. When you are weary enough, you no longer ask, "Why am I doing this?" You simply keep doing it because motion feels like meaning. You mistake movement for purpose. You confuse busyness for life. You become a pilgrim of the pointless, chasing blessings that vanish as soon as you touch them. And the witch smiles again, for she has transformed your strength into servitude. Then comes envy, the fifth sign. It slithers quietly between siblings, between spouses, between generations. It wears the scent of fairness, but tastes of poison. You look upon another's joy and feel it as your own deprivation. You see someone rise and believe it means you have fallen. You cannot celebrate without comparing, and even love becomes a form of competition. The witch knows that envy requires no violence. It turns every relationship into a silent war. And once the family begins to envy itself, there is no need for external enemies. The spell has taken full control. The sixth sign is cynicism, that cool, clever sneer that passes for wisdom in our modern age. Once you believed in goodness, in the possibility of redemption, in the quiet miracle of a humble heart. But the spell teaches you to mock sincerity, to distrust kindness, to treat faith as naivety. You begin to admire those who appear unbothered, who feel nothing, who laugh at ideals as if they were children's toys. And in doing so, you trade your innocence for irony. You become sophisticated in despair. You convince yourself that joy is childish and that only pain proves maturity. Thus the witch wins not by breaking your heart, but by hardening it. She takes the music out of the world and replaces it with noise that calls itself realism. And finally, the seventh sign, the loss of wonder. This is the last and most fatal charm. You can endure greed, survive fatigue, and even heal from envy. But when wonder dies, the soul ceases to see God in anything. The witch's masterpiece is not tragedy, it is dullness. She makes the sunrise ordinary, the laughter of a child unremarkable, the breath of life itself unworthy of awe. She steals nothing but your ability to be amazed. And once that light goes out, the world becomes gray, not because the colors are gone, but because your eyes have grown blind to them. But here lies the strange mercy in the witch's spell. It can be broken the moment you remember who you are, for her power is built on forgetfulness, the forgetting of gratitude, the forgetting of love, the forgetting that every heartbeat is already a miracle. She has no dominion over the soul that remembers. And perhaps that is why she fights so fiercely to fill your days with noise, your nights with scrolling, your heart with restlessness. For stillness is her enemy. Stillness exposes her lie. Stillness lets you hear, beneath the static of the world, the faint, familiar voice that whispers, "You were made for more than this." You see, the spell does not destroy faith, it replaces it. It teaches you to believe in progress, in reputation, in security, in things that shine and rust. And yet the soul, being ancient, knows the difference. It aches beneath the glitter. It longs for the quiet kingdom where joy is not bought, where peace is not performed, where meaning is not negotiated. That ache is not weakness. It is the sound of your awakening. The pain of remembering is the first step toward freedom. To break the spell is to remember simplicity, not as poverty, but as clarity. The witch wants you tangled in choices, addicted to options, imprisoned by abundance. But truth has always been simple. Love one another, forgive quickly, give more than you take, keep your word, guard your thoughts. These are not glamorous commandments, but they are ancient and undefeated. And when practiced, they burn like light against the witch's darkness. For she cannot dwell where there is gratitude, cannot whisper where there is prayer, cannot survive where there is laughter that springs from love. If you wish to save your family, begin not with accusation, but with awareness. Do not hunt for witches in others, find the spell within yourself. The bitterness you feed, the vanity you excuse, the resentment you rehearse, these are her footprints. Sweep them clean, and the air will change. Speak gently, and the silence will thaw. Give without audience, and the light will return. A single act of humility can unweave years of enchantment, for humility is truth without disguise, and truth is the one language the witch cannot speak. The world will mock you for it. It will tell you that love is naive, that faith is for the foolish, that purity is impractical. But remember, it is always the bewitched who laugh at the free. Do not trade your clarity for their confusion. Do not let the world convince you that cynicism is strength. For in the end, every spell fades, every illusion cracks, every false god collapses under the weight of its own emptiness. And when it does, the only thing that remains is the quiet strength of those who chose to stay awake. So awaken. Look around you. Notice the small miracles, the warmth of another's hand, the forgiveness that waits even after disappointment, the breath that rises and falls though you never command it. These are not small things, they are the antidote to the spell. Every act of gratitude breaks a charm. Every moment of silence in which you remember the sacredness of being alive weakens the witch's hold. You do not need to fight her, you only need to stop feeding her. The spell dies the moment you stop believing the lie that you are alone, unworthy, or behind. And then something beautiful happens. The laughter returns. The silence becomes music again. The home, once cold, begins to breathe. You look around and see, not imperfection, but grace, raw, unpolished, undeserved grace. And you realize that your family was never cursed. It was only sleeping. The spell was never destruction. It was distraction. And the miracle is that even now you can wake up. When the spell begins to lift, the world does not suddenly glow. It trembles. There is a strange ache in returning to truth after so long a sleep. It is not easy to face the wreckage of what you allowed while you were enchanted. You see how easily you gave your laughter to noise, your evenings to exhaustion, your attention to the meaningless glow of things that never loved you back. The witch had promised fulfillment, but she delivered fatigue. And now, standing amid the debris of all that seemed important, you are left with the silence of awakening. But it is a holy silence, the sound of your soul breathing again. It is then that you begin to understand that wealth was never the villain, only the mirror. Gold itself is innocent. It reveals what you are generous or greedy, content or consumed. Money has no morality until it passes through your heart. In the hands of the wise it feeds the hungry and shelters the lost. In the hands of the bewitched it builds prisons made of glass and glitter. The spell was not cast upon your possessions, but upon your perception. It taught you to measure your worth by accumulation instead of alignment. But now the mirror clears, and you see, abundance is not what you own, it is what you can give without fear. And so begins the quiet work of rebuilding, not your fortune, but your foundations. The first act of redemption is always remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. The child who found wonder in rain, not profit in storms. The young soul who loved not for advantage, but because it could not help itself. To recover that innocence is not regression, it is resurrection. The witch hates such memories, for they remind you that your joy once came freely, that your spirit once walked unclothed by pride or pretense. That child is still within you, waiting patiently at the door of your ambition, whispering, "Remember me." Do not be ashamed of how far you wandered. Every soul must one day lose its way to discover the worth of light. The spell's purpose was not to damn you, but to awaken you through contrast, for only in the darkness does the yearning for dawn become real. And when that yearning rises, nothing can stop it. The same heart that once bowed to vanity can kneel again in gratitude. The same mind that once built idols can now build altars. You cannot unsee what you now know, and the witch cannot unmake what has been remembered. But be warned, the world will still sing her lullabies. She will return, dressed in new fashions, preaching new doctrines of self-love, optimization, success. The witch knows that the surest way to deceive a generation is to baptize greed in the language of growth. She will tell you that the highest virtue is comfort, that the goal of life is ease, that your value is measured by the admiration of strangers. And if you listen too long, you will forget again that every true transformation begins in discomfort. Ease has never built a single saint. Growth has never come from applause. The garden of the soul is watered with struggle. But the witch would rather you stay thirsty in comfort than drink the living water of truth that costs your pride. So guard your gates, guard your eyes, for they are the lamps of your soul. Guard your tongue, for careless words invite familiar shadows. Guard your time, for it is the currency of eternity. Guard your children not by sheltering them from the world, but by teaching them to see it clearly, to recognize the witch's voice in the form of envy, vanity, and fear. Let them know that the spell is ancient, but the light is older still. For what is ancient is not always wise, and what is modern is not always true. Only love, that strange eternal flame, has survived every age unchanged. There will come a day when you sit again at the family table and realize that the true wealth has returned, not in gold or glamour, but in presence. The laughter that fills the air is not loud, but genuine. The words spoken carry no agenda, only affection. The witch is still outside, pacing the edges of your light, waiting for an open door. But she cannot enter, because you have learned to see her not as a monster, but as a mirror, and mirrors have no power over those who no longer fear their reflection. You will find yourself praying again, not out of desperation, but gratitude. You will give, not because you have excess, but because you have awakened to abundance. You will walk through your home and feel its silence, not as emptiness, but as peace. You will hear the laughter of your children and realize that heaven was never elsewhere. It was here all along, beneath the noise, waiting for you to remember. And when you do, the spell breaks completely, not with a flash or thunderclap, but with a quiet sigh, like the release of a long-held breath. Do not think this victory permanent. Every day the spell tries to return. Every morning the witch whispers through headlines and advertisements, through envy disguised as aspiration, through fear masquerading as wisdom. But now you know the truth. She has no real power except the one you grant her. Every choice you make is either a prayer or a permission. Every thought you dwell upon is either a chain or a key. Every word you speak is either a blessing or another syllable in her spell. Choose well, and you will live free. And so, when the night feels heavy again, when the shadows lengthen, when the world tells you that goodness is outdated and humility is weakness, remember the simple magic that outlasts all enchantments: gratitude, forgiveness, courage, and love. They are the oldest powers of all, the quiet elements of creation. The witch cannot touch them, because they belong not to the world of illusion, but to the realm of truth. Hold them close, and you will never be poor again. And in the end, you will see what all wise souls see, that the spell was never about witches or demons or curses, but about the choices we make when our hearts are tempted to forget their own light. Every spell is broken by remembrance, and every family saved by love that refuses to grow cold. And perhaps that is the final secret. The witch was never outside. She was only the shadow cast by your own unguarded heart. And the moment you choose to love again, even her shadow bows before the light. When a spell fades, it does not vanish. It waits. It lingers like perfume on the edges of memory, hoping to be remembered into power again. For evil, you see, is rarely destroyed. It is starved. It thrives only in the hearts that feed it, in the conversations that excuse it, in the silences that protect it. The witch knows this. She is patient, for she is older than the languages that named her. She waits in the corners of prosperity, in the comfort of certainty, in the applause of the self-satisfied. For her spell is not darkness, it is forgetfulness. And to forget is to fall asleep while standing upright, eyes open, hands full, heart hollow. But you were not made for slumber. The soul was designed to wrestle with eternity. You can feel it even now, that ache that no possession soothes, that longing that no comfort stills. It is the homesickness of the spirit, the whisper of the divine reminding you that you were made for light. Every act of love, every moment of truth, every sacrifice freely given is a thread that pulls you back toward that origin. This is how redemption begins, not as a sudden rescue, but as a gradual remembering, one decision at a time, one kindness at a time, until the spell that once felt infinite is revealed to be nothing but dust on the surface of something immortal. And yet the modern world has built an empire upon that dust. The witch has learned to market her spell as progress, to package her poison in convenience. We are told that we are evolving, that enlightenment means detachment from moral law, that truth is subjective and virtue is optional. And yet beneath all our freedom we are lonelier than ever. Beneath all our wealth we are starving for meaning. Beneath all our connection we are strangers to ourselves. The witch has not cursed us. She has convinced us that our chains are jewelry. To awaken from such a dream is violent. It requires a collapse not of fortune but of illusion. The soul must be broken open to let light through. Suffering becomes sacred not because pain is holy, but because it strips away the false. When you suffer with awareness, you are being reintroduced to truth. The witch cannot follow you there, for her magic is powerless against humility. Humility, that forgotten strength, is the language of angels. It does not grovel, it recognizes. It bows, not in shame, but in clarity, knowing that everything good is a gift, and everything true is borrowed light. If you wish to see your family rise again, teach them this forgotten art, the art of bowing, not before idols, but before one another, in forgiveness, in service, in love that demands no recognition. The proud cannot be healed, for they see no sickness. The vain cannot be restored, for they mistake applause for resurrection. But the humble, those who are willing to see the cracks in their own hearts, become vessels of light. The witch cannot enchant what she cannot deceive, and truth is the one realm she cannot enter. It is strange, isn't it, that in an age of knowledge we have forgotten wisdom? We know the stars, but not their song, the body, but not its meaning, the mind, but not its silence. We have studied everything except the one thing that holds it all together, the soul. And so we are full but famished, connected but lost, advancing but directionless. The witch calls this progress, and we applaud her for it, because we have forgotten how to measure life without numbers. But there is another arithmetic, the sacred mathematics of being, where the smallest act of love outweighs the greatest empire of greed. You can feel that arithmetic in your bones when you forgive someone who does not deserve it, when you give what cannot be repaid, when you choose peace over pride. In that moment, something ancient stirs, the divine pattern reawakens. The witch despises such acts, for they unravel her magic faster than any sermon. She can mimic light but not love, brilliance but not benevolence. Her kingdom is built upon mirrors, and when you choose compassion, you turn them into windows. So walk through your days like a quiet warrior. Let every act of integrity be a sword. Let every word of kindness be an exorcism. Let every humble prayer be a rebellion. You need no spells, no rituals, no charms, only remembrance. For what is remembrance but the reclaiming of what the witch made you forget? That you are loved, that you are capable of light, that you were never meant to live in the gray twilight of fear, but in the full radiance of truth. And truth, when lived, is the highest magic of all. But do not mistake awakening for comfort. The moment you begin to live with awareness, life will test the depth of your sincerity. The witch will return not as greed or vanity, but as despair. She will whisper, "What's the point? The world will not change. Goodness is naive. Love will not last." And that is when you must smile, not the smile of denial, but of understanding. For you will recognize her voice now, and recognition is victory. She cannot deceive those who have learned to listen. Remember this: every generation must slay its own witch, not by violence, but by vision. Ours is the age of distraction, the spell of endless noise. The antidote is not rage, but reverence. Sit in silence. Watch the wind move through trees. Hear your own breath and realize it is a prayer. Gratitude is the oldest counterspell known to man. The grateful heart is unbewitchable. For where there is gratitude, there can be no illusion of ownership, and the witch's magic depends entirely on the illusion that you are the center of the world. Perhaps that is the ultimate secret. The witch never existed at all. She was the shape that your pride took when it forgot heaven. She was the echo of your fear when it lost faith. She was the shadow of your own desire, longing to be loved without the labor of loving. And when you see that, truly see it, you will not curse her, you will weep for her, for she was only what you became when you believed the lie that you were alone. And when love returns, she disappears not in flames, but in forgiveness. For forgiveness is the final miracle. It does not rewrite the past, it redeems it. It turns what was broken into something blessed, not because the pain was good, but because you chose to turn it into wisdom. The witch's greatest defeat is not your success, but your mercy. To forgive those who hurt you, to release those who betrayed you, to bless those who cursed you, this is how you unmake the spell for generations to come. This is how families heal. This is how darkness loses its name. And one day, when your children speak of you, they will not remember the house or the riches, but the warmth. They will say, "We were loved. We were taught to see light in everything." And somewhere beyond time, a witch who never existed will vanish like smoke into the morning. When the light returns, it does not come as thunder or spectacle. It comes as stillness. It comes in the quiet hour before dawn, when the house is asleep, and your heart, stripped of ambition, finally breathes without wanting. That is when you realize that the world was never dark. It was only your eyes that were closed. The witch had never stolen your blessings. She had only hidden them beneath your expectations. And as the spell dissolves, you begin to see what you had always missed, that the sacred was never far away. It lived in the patience of your mother, in the steady hands of your father, in the laughter of your children, in the very air that carried your breath. You were never cursed. You were merely blind. And so, gratitude becomes your sight. You no longer measure your days by profit, but by presence. Wealth, once an idol, becomes an instrument, no longer something to possess, but something to direct, to transform, to sanctify. You learn that money is a shadow of intention. It takes on the shape of the soul that wields it. In the hands of the sleeping, it deepens the spell. In the hands of the awakened, it becomes mercy made visible. The witch cannot touch it anymore, for the spell of greed has no power where generosity rules. What you give becomes your treasure, and what you cling to turns to dust. That is the alchemy of truth. It transforms possession into purpose. In that moment, the very air feels different. You begin to walk through the world not as a consumer, but as a custodian. You look at your family not as extensions of your ego, but as sacred mirrors of the divine. You start to speak less, but every word carries the weight of care. You find yourself forgiving easily, not because you are weak, but because your heart has grown strong enough to release what once poisoned it. The witch's whispers fade. The music of life returns. Even sorrow begins to sound like grace. For the first time, you understand that joy is not the absence of pain, it is the transformation of it. The world will not understand this kind of wealth. It cannot calculate peace. It cannot monetize kindness. It cannot measure meaning. But you will know, as all the awakened know, that the truest success is not applause but alignment, the harmony between what you believe, what you say, and what you do when no one is watching. The witch built her kingdom on dissonance. The light rebuilds it through integrity. Every time you keep your word when it costs you something, Every time you give without audience, every time you choose patience when anger would be easier, you are rebuilding the world from the inside out. You are unspelling it. And then one evening you look upon your family not as a collection of achievements or roles, but as living souls entrusted to your care, and you feel the magnitude of grace. The room glows without light. The air hums with presence. You feel the veil between the seen and unseen thinning, as if the entire universe were leaning in to listen. And in that sacred silence, you realize that love is not an emotion. It is an order, the divine architecture that holds existence together. The witch tried to fracture it by teaching the soul to worship itself, but the moment you love beyond yourself, her entire empire collapses. The beauty of this revelation is that it asks for nothing dramatic. You do not need to preach it, you need only to live it. You become the sermon. Your calm becomes a sanctuary. Your patience becomes a prayer. Your faith becomes a contagion of peace. The spell is broken not through confrontation, but through conversion, not of doctrine, but of being. The awakened soul radiates a quiet authority that no darkness can mimic. The witch fears this above all, for she knows that one fully alive human being, one soul completely surrendered to love, can change the fate of generations. It is here, at the summit of awareness, that you see the true paradox. The witch and the light were never enemies. They were teachers. The spell was the necessary shadow that revealed your hunger for meaning. Without illusion, you would never have searched for truth. Without losing peace, you would never have learned to guard it. Without the witch, you might never have known your own strength. For even darkness, when surrendered to wisdom, becomes sacred. Every fall, every failure, every moment of blindness was not punishment but preparation, the slow chiseling of your soul into something eternal. And now, standing in the aftermath of your awakening, you are no longer the person who began this journey. You have seen too much to return to sleep. You have tasted something beyond comfort, the fierce joy of truth. You no longer pray for ease but for endurance. You no longer seek wealth for pleasure but for purpose. You no longer fear loss, for you have learned that nothing real can be taken from you. The witch's spell is gone, but its lesson remains, that every illusion, however cruel, is an invitation to remember what is eternal. So what is eternal? Not the house, not the career, not even the body that carries you. It is love. It is the invisible current that flows through every act of grace, every moment of courage, every decision to rise when the world says, stay down. Love that quiet rebellion against meaninglessness is the fire that the witch could never extinguish. It is what keeps the stars from collapsing, what keeps the heart from hardening, what keeps creation from ending. Love is not a feeling. It is the pulse of God Himself breathing through you. And when you realize this, when it moves from concept to conviction, everything ordinary becomes radiant. The kitchen table becomes an altar. The sound of laughter becomes worship. The act of forgiveness becomes resurrection. You do not escape the world. You transfigure it. You no longer ask for miracles because you see that life itself was the miracle all along. The witch's spell depended on your blindness. Your gratitude becomes your sight. You begin to live not as a survivor of darkness, but as a bearer of light. And so the final secret reveals itself. The witch was not your enemy, but your shadow longing to be loved back into wholeness. She disappears when you forgive her. That is, when you forgive yourself. The curse was self-inflicted. The redemption, self-remembered. You awaken to find that there was never any witch, never any spell, only the long forgetting and the longer journey home. And in that moment of realization, pure, unguarded, unrepeatable, the entire universe seems to exhale with you. For one soul reclaimed is a light rekindled, and one family healed is a hymn sung back into heaven. The dawn has come, the spell is undone, and in the silence that follows, the world once gray and heavy gleams again with the ancient wonder of being loved.